Today I've decided to correct the tragedies of the past, to not do a pun or a dad joke, but to offer you a piece of advice, probably the best advice you will ever hear. What I'm about to tell you has been passed down in my family from generation to generation, and it could very well change your life. And this advice... What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Wes Anderson is back with that very distinct and beautiful style. We're going to talk about his new film today. Spoiler-free, let me know down below. What is your favorite Wes Anderson movie? If you'd like to see mine, drop your thumbs up. I may just do a tier list at catching up on some of his films I haven't seen yet, but as of now, let's do it. This film is a love letter to journalists set in an outpost of an American newspaper in a fictional 20th century French city that brings to life a collection of stories published in the French Dispatch magazine. And this movie is an anthology, and like most anthologies, there are certain parts of the film that I thoroughly enjoyed more than others, but for the most part, I think they do come together in a cohesive way with this nice backdrop kind of focusing on Bill Murray's character, where the death of its editor, not a spoiler, it's literally the introduction to the film, brings all of these writers together, and there are a handful of discussions to be had. Again, this is the backdrop of the film. It's not one of the main three stories. I guess technically there are four stories, one kind of focusing on Owen Wilson's character where it sets the table for what's to come, where he's going around this fictional town and describing all of the residents and locations and just things that we encounter throughout the movie. So we get an idea as to what this town is. Again, fictional, Wes Anderson style fictional. So even different than maybe what you're expecting. So it's got that quirkiness, it has that distinct fantastical feel that we know and love, but the three stories are the focus. So what is each story about? You have revisions to a manifesto where Frances McDormand's character is kind of writing about this youth revolt that is led by, hey look, it's Timothée Chalamet, Paul Atreides. But she gets a little too close to her subjects and almost gets caught up in the middle. Now, this one's interesting. It's kind of a chess match between the two sides. We have a police standoff scene, which was really intense, honestly, a lot more intense than I anticipated it to be. A lot of cameos, really in all of the stories. There are cameos that will pop up and you're like, I thought they were going to be in the movie for a lot longer. But Saoirse Ronan, Elizabeth Moss, they're just not in the film all that much. But back to this story. This one was interesting, but this was the story for me that would occasionally drag more so than the others, and I couldn't really get on board with the characters as much. I loved the performances, maybe two of the best performances in the entire film. You could really make an argument for all of them, and again, a couple of scenes in there that are fantastic, but I wasn't as engaged by this portion of the film, and kind of the motivations of the characters were lacking just a bit. I still enjoyed it. And funny enough, this is the middle of the three stories. We kind of start here, go into a bit of a lull, but I like the way that it ended off. Then we have the concrete masterpiece kind of narrated by Tilda Swinton's character, who is talking about her encounter with this imprisoned artist who becomes this sensation outside of where he's being held. It stars Adrian Brody, the main character, probably being Benicio del Toro. Leah Saido. Henry Winkler is in this portion, which was extremely fun. But this one revolves around this artist, and I found it to be particularly engaging because you use his motivations and his passion to establish this connection to a character. Leah Saido probably gives the most compelling performance of the bunch because of her confliction, but also the relationships that are formed and how this honestly enhances the visual style surrounding it, a very distinct visual style that we'll talk about more so here in just a second. But all of it comes together to create for one of the more fascinating experiences Wes Anderson has ever given us, and I was really compelled by it all because you see the impact that he has, but at the end of the day, we continue to come back from him and kind of being locked in for various reasons that they may or may not hit on in the film. And of course, Del Toro giving a phenomenal performance. I loved the chemistry between the cast, especially in this portion, and it was definitely a compelling and engaging way to kind of get us started with these three stories. And the final story, and literally the final story, is the vignette where Jeffrey Wright is kind of talking about his night out with this police officer slash chef. Wright is a food critic kind of judging the meals being made by the police officer, and the entire night gets thrown into insanity when his son is kidnapped. And then you get this crazy car chase towards the end of the film, and I won't say who is involved and why they're involved, but the most fascinating part of this film is that that scene in particular is given to us with this 2D animation. So again, all of this speaks to the style And you have Wright's performance in this portion, which is so compelling and engaging because of what he's kind of going through. And then, the fact that he's already, in my opinion, one of the best actors of the bunch, elevates the material to give us one of the most emotional performances we've ever seen in a Wes Anderson film. I thought it was phenomenal. So all of it comes together to create another fascinating portion where, again, the characters surrounding Wright's character, I wasn't as invested in and fascinated by. I think that's one of the problems that I'm running in with this film, is I'm not as compelled as something like Budapest or Moonrise Kingdom as of late, or even Isle of Dogs, which I loved. But French Dispatch, even though there are a couple of narrative walls, it can't quite get over the stories that do, really the aspects that do, are just so fascinating, just so entertaining. And that entertainment, I think if you're not the biggest Wes Anderson fan, you may not feel that because the style may occasionally, I could even use the term style over substance. I don't think that's necessarily the case with this movie. I still found some substance, but maybe not as much as a few of his prior outings. I was still engaged, but if you don't love Wes Anderson, you may just find this, I've heard some people call it boring. Walking out of the theater, I was like, oh, well, I don't feel that way, but that's okay. I understand why. And on a technical level, do I really even need to talk about it? You guys know, it's Wes Anderson, but this may be the most Wes Anderson-y out of the Wes Anderson movies, that he has directed. Oh my gosh, just doing some things here, though, that are different, right? From a cinematography perspective, more wide shots, a bit more distinct movements this time around. The score coming in underneath all of it and really amplifying the narrative. And then the color grading. You get the black and white, you get the splash of color every now and then that comes in and makes it just... I am so mad at myself, my most recent Oscar prediction video. I thought maybe they would just overlook this movie, but after seeing it, I'm thinking, how does it not get nominated for production design, cinematography, all of these things? I'm like, on a technical level, it's brilliant. Doesn't quite measure up from a story perspective, but I still enjoyed the story, so it all comes together to create for a memorable experience. Before I give you guys my score, I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, like I said, drop your thumbs up and comment your thoughts. Best Wes Anderson movie? Which act of this film did you enjoy the most? The French Dispatch may not be as compelling as Anderson's most recent outings, but the style and world building here make up for this by delivering some fantastic visuals. Not as high as maybe I wanted to go with my score, but I'm going a 74%. Where does it rank amongst the rest of his movies, in my opinion? Tune in to find out if you'd like to see it, and stay tuned because we have a lot of videos coming out on this channel. Reviews, tier lists, a live stream, all those things coming this weekend. Happy Halloween, folks. I'll see you soon.